where to go to college, who to marry. Am I gonna buy a house right now in this crazy market? I don't know. It's so hard to make these big decisions. It can be overwhelming. Am I gonna mess my life up? Am I gonna mess your life up? Who knows? Let's check in with Matt and Lee and see what they have to say about making high stakes decisions.
So Lee, you and I talk about a whole bunch of stuff. We talk about sports, we talk about job stuff, and we definitely talk about family things. And one of the things for me recently has been trying to make some decisions for my mom. She's getting older, she's had some health issues, and so my wife and I are really trying to make some decisions that affect her, financially, logistically, and affect us too. And what I notice in trying to make those decisions is that there's a real weight to those decisions.
Yeah.
And I really feel the significance of that, knowing that these decisions really matter, that the stakes are really high, and sometimes it can just be really overwhelming. So I'm curious to hear from you in your experiences, and as you talk to so many different people who go through tough situations like that, like how do you navigate making big life decisions when the stakes feel really high and it feels like I got to get this right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me first say, because I want to move this conversation in the direction of like the mental health world, but let's assume that there's a whole category of just like wisdom. Like you just want to be wise and you want to do all your homework.
Sure.
Like whether it's like, who to date, whether to buy a house, or you're going to get married, like how you're going to raise your kids. These are all critical decisions that we have throughout our life. And we want to be wise about it. You want to make sure you gather as much information as you can. So let's just assume that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted kind of thing.
Yeah.
That leaves an entire world of just how we handle that from an emotional mental health standpoint. Okay, so when we frame it just in that way, my mind goes to just thinking of maybe two ways in which this impacts people. First is the fear of regret and feeling guilt, right? Like that if I don't make the right decision, that a year from now or however time from now, I'm going to look back on this as the moment that I made a mistake, right?
Right.
I should have done this different, and now I'm paying the price, right? So there's just something around the whole idea of regret and feeling potential guilt that I feel like we would need to be able to get a handle on and work through, and to know how to recover from and normalize, so they're not crippled by the idea of regret, right? And so that's one thing. And if I can even say it this way, just kind of think of the imagery of maybe someone standing at a crossroads, right?
Okay.
That they're thinking left or right, and the decision they make has these huge implications that if I go down this road, I'm going to regret that this is the moment that I didn't make the right decision. I should have gone this way instead, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like people put a lot of pressure on needing to make the right decision when in reality, we don't have all the information. We're working with imperfect data a lot of times. And that the way we make these decisions isn't necessarily binary, right? So that's one of the things that comes to my mind.
Yeah, that seems really helpful though, because you use this imagery of standing at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And it really is a concrete, you can think of it that way, that it has to be left and it's only left, or it has to be right and it's only right.
Yeah.
The thing is that those crossroads, those roads won't ever intersect again.
Yeah, as though you're stuck there.
But that's not how life is.
Right.
But you make a choice, and even like you said, you make choices with the best information that you have available to you. But even that information is imperfect.
Yeah.
And you don't really know how it's going to play out, but your choice doesn't lead you 100% straight down this road and 100% down this road. It all is intertwined and overlaps and is this sort of spectrum. So if that's the case, how do you practically implement that in your life to where you can make a decision and you don't have that burden of it's only this one thing?
Yeah, I think that moves a little bit into the second thing I was going to talk about, which is, again, a little bit of what we have to do in the mental health world, which is begin to start really poking at the idea of control. Because this is the fallacy that I find a lot of times, that if we plan everything just right, and if we make the right decision, that we can control the outcome of what's going to happen. Right.
Right.
And so I find that thought pattern to be at its end a bit unhealthy and can be very destructive in terms of just what we're talking about, that there's a pressure that we can control the outcome of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if we move this to a place where like, you know what, like we don't have as much control as we want to, and we may have to be okay with being, just grieving the loss of having the outcome the way we want. Like, you know, we did all these things and maybe mom doesn't have the situation that you originally wanted for her, or maybe things aren't the picture perfect way that we had planned and set things up to be. If we can get a little bit more comfortable with the fact that things are going to be imperfect, and we may have to have gain and loss in different ways that we didn't expect, and we don't have to have these controls all the time, that moves us into a place where those decisions are a little bit easier to make.
So if we can get to a place of recognizing that that decisions that we make with imperfect information, we can still end up in a good spot, or still recognize that there are other opportunities, maybe even down the road.
Yes.
So if we can kind of accept that, and we can begin to grieve the loss of control, and acknowledge that sure, things may not work out the way that we want, but give ourselves a permission in saying, I'm working with the best information that I had. And you mentioned being wise. It seems like that really opens up and for a lot of freedom to make all sorts of choices in our life.
Absolutely, yeah. If you were to ask me, like, you know, a year ago, what life was going to look like now, I would not have been able to tell you that this is what I planned, and that this may not be what we had wanted then, but it's not like it was within our plans of what our definition of what good was going to be. It's I think God works in very organic ways to where like our present situation is actually a better situation than what we had thought originally, like from a year ago, right? And so I find just in my own life, when I begin to let go of those things, that God can orchestrate things much better than I can.
I think you bring up a really good point too, is that we can make choices as imperfect people with imperfect information, but yet God can redeem bad situations.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Whether it's a bad choice, like maybe we could, with the best intentions, think that we're being
and that's all
really
throughout the
wise.
Bible too. You go through Scripture, there's all these times in which just humanity makes dumb decisions, right? But God redeems them and changes them for His good, right? So I think that gets us in a much better place where we can be comfortable with not having the control that we would like to have.
Wow. Give yourself permission to not be in control, and I know that's such a hard thing to do. If you found this video helpful, feel free to share it with someone who maybe needs to hear it. And check out the description for more helpful resources. We'll see you later.